First off, thank y'all for serving. You know, it's something that y'all should be applauded for in terms of it because you're doing a civic duty and helping us run this election. It's a hard job, and you got to sit here and do this training, and then you're going to be at the polls for a long time during that day. But it's a great thing that you're doing, and I really appreciate. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the basics. We're going to be running things. Tim Beyea is going to be telling us about the poll pad and educating y'all on that, and then we're going to be going through in terms of the new machines. You're familiar with the DS200 that we've had the last election. This machine right here up on the stage is the new Express Vote. That replaces the AutoMark. That's the ADA machine. It's lighter. It's a little different way of having to vote. It's a good bit different way of having to vote, and it's an easier voting system. So I think it'll make it easier. I don't know how many people have handicapped voters that come and vote, but it is available and it's there to help. Tonight, Susie Odom is here. She's over here. And then we've got Rachel Williams from the registrar's office. Susie, as you know, is our circuit clerk, and she's been serving a long time. We won't say how long. But she does a great job, and she does the absentee, so she'll talk about that some. One thing about the absentee, some of y'all were asked to work out a precinct. And I'm going to steal your thunder, Susie, I'm sorry. And the ones that are working out a precinct, if you haven't already done your absentee ballot, that's the way that you need to do it, and you've got until Thursday to do that. You can't request one in mail because it's too late to do that, but you need to come in and do it one in person. You do your absentee ballot so you don't have to leave the poll place that day, because once you sign as a poll worker, you're there for the day until the end of the poll. So to keep it not as long, we were a little longer this morning. I think it went about 2 hours. I'm going to try to see if we can shorten it slightly because I'm sure everybody wants to go home. Who wants to go home already? Yeah, I figured that. Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get it out of the way so we all know that we're telling the truth. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let Mr. Beyea come up and start that process with the poll pads, and then we'll take questions during that or after it actually, and then we'll do the other things, and we'll be taking questions about that and going through some stuff about the actual voting. I really asked y'all, if you have a question, ask it. And remember, I forgot to introduce somebody. See that fellow in the brown shirt over there? That's the one that's been harassing y'all for the last couple of weeks. That's Jerry Davis. So, I'm sure that's your new best friend, right? Okay. So just make sure the day of election, if there's an issue, you call myself, you call Mr. Davis, you call Susie, you call Rachel, and we will come out and take care of it. We're going to keep y'all running as smooth as possible, and I really appreciate y'all. So having said that, without any further ado, I'll let Mr. Beyea take over, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Again, good evening. My name is Tim. You don't have to call me Mr. Beyea. Now I'm in the dark. But I'm going to go to the back here in a minute and run the show from the back because my clicker doesn't reach that far. But now I'm not in the dark anymore. The pressure's on because the others are all taped, so I've got to move faster if you're going to get out earlier. I'm the only one that can shorten it, so I'm going to try and go fast. Who here has not ever done elections with a poll pad? Okay, I can't see you, but it's part of our Technicolor show. It's all white lights. So anyway, we're going to go through a few different scenarios of voting. Those of y'all probably have seen it some last year, but the different options for what can happen when a voter comes to the polling location, different ways you handle the different scenarios. Afterwards, if you want to play with the poll pads, they're over here. We'll have them turned on. You've got a sample election on there. You can't hurt anything. It will not scan barcodes, though. So you can do some manual check-ins. I'm going to wander to the back, and then we'll get started. Microphone. Okay, so there's nothing to fear in an iPad or a poll pad. It's basically an overgrown cell phone, and you can drive your cell phone, you can drive these things. It's intended to help the voters move through the line quickly. It's easy to use, easy to set up. We're going to go through that. At the start of the day, before you open the polls, you're going to open your iPad and get them set up. And opening up the iPad, these are the parts you're going to see. The case, number 2 is the iPad, the base. Then you've got the little sled that holds the license. Hopefully 2 styluses. Some only have 1 in there because those do walk off. And the power cord. That's all the parts we've got. As far as opening it up, this you do not have to do. It'll already be attached. Then you got to slide the stand into the base, slide the holder for the license onto the little slot that it slides into. Plug in the iPad. That's probably the most important thing I can say today, and I'm going to say it 4 more times before we're done. Plug it in so that it stays charged, and if the power goes out, you still got power. Once you plug it in, and it should automatically turn on if you had power when you plugged it in. If it does not, then just hit the power button in the upper left corner, hold it until you see the apple, and it'll continue to boot. It'll come up in about 30 seconds. Any questions on setting up the equipment? Okay. It's pretty easy. When you do set it up, though, look at how it's in the case before you start, so you can put it back the same way. All right. We've already pretty much gone through meeting the iPad, so we're going to skip that. All right. This is what the poll pad front screen looks like, with the exception of the background will be a blue and green background this year that says, "Welcome to poll pad." The important part is this button right here, or this icon. You're going to tap on the big little green P for poll pad, and then this screen will open up. On this screen, you want to make note that at the top, it says check-ins 0. If it does not, you should immediately call Jerry. And we'll figure out what to do about that, because it should say 0 because nobody's checked in yet. Also look at the jurisdictional information in the middle. Make sure it says something pertaining to your polling location and not the one down the street. Again, if it does not, call Jerry immediately. I'm putting a lot of weight on Jerry. But he knows how to get hold of me, so he's probably going to hand me a case and tell me to bring it to you. Then also in the upper right-hand corner, if your iPad does not have a 100 up there, it should have some number reasonably close to that. That's the percentage of charge in the iPad. All right, this is what you see after that P is clicked, the poll pad icon. It's going to open up to a Walker County start screen. You're going to click Get Started. You have only 1 choice on that page. You can't get that one wrong. All right, this is the home screen for voter check-in. You have 2 options. On the left side, you've got scanning a barcode, and that's how we're going to go through our first voter. We got a voter walking up, and he has a driver's license. So we scan his barcode, and it says he's George Washington. So we're going to verify this information here. And one thing to watch out for on these iPads, whenever an icon turns blue, dark blue, not light blue, but dark blue, it's trying to convince you to click on that icon. Click on that button. So in this case, once you've confirmed that George is in fact George, however you choose to confirm that, you're going to click on the Accept button. Once you've accepted it, this is an important screen. This is a primary, so you're going to have 3 options, or George is going to have 3 options. These are the 3 options: constitutional amendment, Republican, or Democrat. If he picks Republican, he has to vote Republican in the runoff. If he picks Democratic, he has to vote Democratic in the runoff. If he chooses constitutional amendment, he's choosing to only vote for the amendment, and he can do whatever he wants in the runoff. And then guess what you're going to do? Once he's clicked one, that button that is light blue will turn dark blue. I couldn't show that because I would have had to make a choice during taking my pictures. But that will turn dark blue, and then you click Accept, and it'll move to the next screen, which is where you let George put his signature on the line. Once George signs in, look at that. The dark blue in the upper right-hand corner is trying to get you to say he's done signing, or get him to say he's done signing. Somebody has to click that button. Once that's been selected, moves on to the confirmation screen. This is for you to confirm that everything's right before you hit the submit. Once it's submitted, George is checked in. So you're going to look at that one last time. You see his signature is there. He doesn't need any assistance. And you're going to click the blue button, submit. And you'll get the happy screen there that says George has been processed successfully. So that is checking in a voter with a scannable license. Any questions on that? Okay. Now, one other thing to think about, if there is a light above where you're doing your voter check-in, make sure the glare isn't on, that there's no glare on the license. Because if there's glare on that barcode, it can't see all the dots, it can't scan it. So another thing to look at is right here, George, since he's checked in, that now says check-ins 1. So each poll pad is going to count the number of check-ins for that individual pad. If you were to add up all the poll pads in your location, every location has somewhere between 1 and 4, then it should be somewhat close to the number of ballots you handed out. With spoiled ballots, it could be off by 1 or 2 or 3. If you end up casting more ballots than you check in, then Jerry's going to freak out and yell at me and tell me something went wrong. All right, I asked you if you had any questions about George. You said no. All right, our second voter is walking in. It's a guy we know. His name is Martin Van Buren. He also has a driver's license. So we're going to click right there. We're going to click on scan barcode. We scanned the barcode. It brought up his voter information. We're going to look at all this and verify that this is Martin Van Buren. And then guess what? We're going to click the blue button, accept. And then we've got 3 choices. We're going to pick one of those, and we're going to click accept. Now we've got the screen for signing. He's already signed it. He was really quick. So we're going to click done signing. And now we're back to the screen where we have confirmed the voter's information. This is, again, your last shot to look at what he's got there. It's got his ballot style on it in case you need to select the right ballot style to hand him. And then you're going to click submit. You've now checked in your second voter, Martin Van Buren. And on this page, you also see his ballot style. Any questions about Marty? Okay. Third voter comes in. He's ready to vote. We kind of recognize this guy. He's got a barcode, so we're going to scan it. Uh-oh. This one looks different. You notice it's shaded in green. And it's George Washington again. He tried to come back and vote a second time. You'd think he'd know better. So anyway, you're going to politely tell George he's already been here. If something went wrong, you're going to have to figure out what that was. But anyway, he already says he's voted. You see voted right there in the middle. Any green highlighted screen or green highlighted data field is going to be one that's already voted or already checked in anyway. So you're going to have no choice but to click the start over and move on to your next voter. Any questions about repeat voters? We don't do repeat voters in Alabama. That's a Mississippi thing. And if you want to know stories about that, I'll tell you those later. I'm a Mississippi boy. So, moving on. We have another voter coming in. This guy does not have a scannable barcode of any kind. He has to have some other type of ID, or else you're just going to turn him away. But he's got a valid ID that's accepted by Alabama for voting purposes. And we're going to have to do what's called a manual entry. Manual entry, you click the manual entry button. Now you have to click the gray buttons at the bottom. You can't click on the pictures. I always want to click the pictures. You have to click the brownish gray at the bottom. So manual entry, and you're going to type in 3 letters of his last name. Always try and keep it to a minimum. 3 is a good start. The more letters you type, the more likely either you are to make an error or you are going to trigger one of the errors that's been made in data entry previously. So T-A-Y for Taylor, Z-A-C for Zachary, and then you're going to hit the search button. When you hit that search button, his data field will come up. And you see here Zachary Taylor, and it shows that he's supposed to vote at Legion Field. It's a white background with black letters on it. That doesn't imply it, flat says that he belongs at this precinct. So now you're going to verify his information, and you're going to tap on that entry right there. It's going to bring up his page to verify his voter information. You're going to look at all this information and verify that it's really him, and then you're going to hit the blue button. Again, you've got to let him make his 3 choices, make one of 3 choices, these 3, and then you're going to hit the blue button. Okay, now he's signed. You're going to click the Done Signing button. You have a last chance to verify all his information, make sure it's all good. If you wanted to back up, you could hit the Start Over button. But if everything's accurate, you're going to hit Submit. He's checked in. You've recorded his ballot style, so you can hand in the right one. And then you've now checked in your next voter. Any questions about Zachary? All right, we're moving on then. Next voter comes up. It's our buddy John Adams. We know him. He's got a driver's license, so we're going to click on the scan barcode again, and you just put that license in the tray. It's got a slot that holds an exact license-sized card with the barcode aiming towards you, which is also towards the iPad. The camera has to see that barcode. It can't read their face. So click on that. This one's different. It's pink. Anything pink implies that something has happened with this voter surrounding absentee voting. In this case, it says received, which means he received a license, that he was given an absentee ballot and it was received back. So anyway, you're going to have to, when you click on him, it's going to tell you exactly what to do. It's one thing to remember about these iPads. As long as you have a working finger to touch the buttons and you can read, you'll be okay. So you tap his field right there, and it's going to tell you exactly what to do. It says, this voter has applied for an absentee ballot. To vote today at this polling place, he or she must vote by provisional ballot. Direct the voter to the provisional ballot officer. So you're going to, as nicely as you can, explain that to him or her. This is John, him. And send him on his way to the provisional. And then you're going to have to hit one of these 2 buttons, which both take you to the same place. And you're going to go back. And then you can hit the Start Over button, and that's an absentee. Any questions about Johnny Boy and his absentee voting behavior? We're getting no questions. That's a good thing, I guess. All right, next voter comes in. His name is Scott Leindecker. He does not have a license, so what are you going to do? You're going to click Manual Entry, so you can type in his name. And you type in L-I-N, because you think you know how to spell Leindecker. And you type S-C-O for Scott. And then you're going to hit Search. When you hit Search, you get the ugly red whammy. No records found. So I'm sorry, Mr. Leindecker, you do not exist. You need to go somewhere. I don't think he's going to like that. So you're going to hit OK and say, let's see if we can figure something out. You ask him how to spell his name. You find out it's actually spelled like this, L-E-I-N-D-E-C-K-E-R. So you're going to change this to L-E-I, and then you're going to hit the search button. And that brought him up just fine. So that's how you get Scott Leindecker. You just have to spell it right. You're going to verify his information. You're going to hit the blue button, and you're going to let him make his choice of party or agnostic constitutional amendment. And then you're going to click the Accept button. He's going to sign his name. You can't read it, but he signed it. And then you're going to hit the Done Signing button. Now we've gotten to the final Confirm the Voter's Information page. You're going to confirm all that. This is your last chance to back out. And then you're going to hit the Submit button, and you're done with Scott. Any questions on Scott? Okay. Got another voter coming in. We're popular today. His name is Brett Harless. Okay, he has a license. So we're going to go ahead and hit Scan Barcode. Now he's even different. He's yellow. Yellow implies an inactive voter. And you see right there in the middle it says inactive. Oh gosh, what do I do with inactive Brett Harless? Well, I can't figure it out, but I'm going to tap on his record and it's going to tell me. Right here, voter is marked inactive. Direct voter to complete voter re-identification update form before being processed. So you're going to hand him the form or direct him to the table, however you do that, and tell him that when he comes back, you'll take him to the front of the line and take care of him. But in the meantime, we're going to hit Go Back so we can handle the guy that's standing behind him. So, and then we have to hit start over so we can get back to the main page. All right, so he processed 3 or 4 more voters while he's over filling out his form, and then he comes back. So you scan his license one more time. He's still inactive. Of course he is, because he's holding his reactivation form. You can still verify he is him. You're going to tap on his record there in the yellow area. Just tap it anywhere. And there he is. So the information is still the same. You know, he's inactive. But you can now click Form Completed because he's holding a completed form. He hands it in to you, and you hit Form Completed. Now we're back on track with where we used to be, where we're used to being. You can verify his information, hit the blue button, tell him to select his party, hit the Accept button, let him sign, done signing. And again, this is the last chance to back out, because once you've submitted it, it's in there, unless we do magic to take it out. And then you're going to hit that Submit button. That's Brett Harless. Any questions about Brett? Okay. All right, we got another man walking in the door. He's a tall guy with a stovepipe hat. His name is Abraham Lincoln. He does not have a driver's license. So we're going to click Manual Entry, type in LIN for Lincoln, ABR for Abraham, and we're going to hit Search. Oh gosh, it's another one of these pink guys. This one says Sent. It really doesn't matter. You handle sent and received the same way. And actually, I've seen just absentee in that slot, so I'm not sure how it reads this year. But all absentees are handled the same way. You're going to click on the pink field there, and it's going to tell you the same thing. Voter has applied for an absentee ballot to vote today at this polling place. He or she must vote by provisional ballot. Direct them to the PBO and let them do their thing. So again, you have 2 choices. Pick either button. It's going to take you back to the same page. But that's Abraham Lincoln voting absentee. I'm guessing there's no questions on that because it's really the same as the other. It was just one was sent and one was received. All right, new voter, Thomas Jefferson just walked in. You're going to hit Scan Barcode. I do not know how Thomas Jefferson got a driver's license, but he has one. So you're going to scan it, and you're going to check him in. Okay, it's got his date of birth there. I checked that. That's not accurate date of birth. I didn't think it could be. 1903. He should be 287 years old, I think, last month. Something like that. Anyway, he's scanned. It read him just fine. He verifies information. You're going to hit the Accept button. He's going to have to pick his party. You're going to hit the Accept button. And you're going to hit Done Signing. And now guess what? Thomas Jefferson is going to tell you that he needs assistance. He's got this guy with him, and that guy is there to help him vote because, gosh, dogged, he's 287 years old, and he needs some help. So you've got the Assistance Required button. It's a little checkbox. Once you touch that checkbox, if you look right there, you can see it's got a check mark in it now. But more importantly, it brought up the Assistance Required form. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see a drop-down. And when you click on that drop-down right there, you get a list. And I'm not positive exactly what your list says. It's customizable, but it's going to say something like legally blind, or in this case, other disability. And I don't know exactly what infirmities Thomas is dealing with, but we're going other disability. And then you're going to let the person who's with him sign the form, and then you hit the Continue button, which is turned dark blue to try and convince you to touch it. All right, Thomas Jefferson has been checked in with a helper. Any questions about check-ins with assistants? Oh, did I hear something? Judge, do you want to answer that question? The official rules on who can be an assistant.
In terms of having an ID, they don't have to have one. However, they can't be an employer. They can't be a union head. It can be basically anyone else that can help them in terms of being an assistant in regard to that, but there are just some restrictions that they can't be. But that you're not going to have necessarily an ID from the person that's the assistant. That answer your question? Okay.
And if you didn't memorize that right then, Greg will tell you that 3 times in his video. So, okay. So we've already asked the quick questions. We have one nice lady walking in the back door. I think she's our first female voter, Sherry Daniels. Sherry is not got a driver's license. I don't know her situation, but we're going to do a manual entry on Sherry. So we're going to click manual entry. Okay, I took my slide a little too early here, but we typed in DAN, we typed SHE for Sherry, and then we click search. When we did that, we got this gray field. Gray is alerting you that this person does not belong in your polling location. So, or at least the system says she does not belong in your polling location. And you'll notice on the right side it says wrong location. And to the left of that, you see what her official location to vote is in the system. So you're going to tell Miss Sherry, I'm sorry, you're not, the system says you're not supposed to be voting here, you're supposed to be voting at the First Baptist Church. We have directions in your packet that you can give her the address of the First Baptist Church and send her there. She'll be able to just check right in. She might say, but I've moved, I live in this precinct. In which case, I believe the right answer is you would probably let her vote provisionally. Is that correct, Judge? Is that the right answer there? Provisional ballot if they claim they belong in the precinct, but they show up as some other address? So we've got a voter who's walked into the wrong precinct. That's right, you've seen this show before. We've got a voter, they've walked into the wrong precinct, according to the system, but they claim they have moved to this precinct. We would let them vote provisionally and fill out a change of address form, probably.
You have to do the update form, and then you do the change, which will do the change of address, and then you'll do a provisional ballot. And I know y'all hate provisional ballots. I understand that. We still have to do them and make sure that they're done, and we follow through with that. We'll talk more about that in the next part. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. So, but anyway, if you see any gray one comes up, you're going to be dealing with a voter that, as the system is concerned, they're in the wrong location. And you'll be dealing with that through one of your various processes. And this is, if you were to click on that form, on that field there, it's going to come up and show you absolutely nothing because it can't get to the internet to get you a map to show you how to get to that precinct. So I wouldn't bother clicking on it. But if you do, that's what you're going to see, and that's why it's blank. Click the start over because she's moved on. She's either voting provisionally or driving at a high rate of speed because it's 6:50 and she wants to get to the other polling location. Any questions about Sherry? Wrong location voters? Okay. We've got John Smith Jr. coming in the door. Oh, was there a question? Yes, they have to be in the database to show up as wrong location. So your database has the entire voter roll for Walker County in it. If they're not registered in Walker County and living in the confines of your precinct, then they'll show up wrong location. If they move to another county and have been taken out of the database, they won't show up. Judge is standing at the mic, though. I know he's got some information to share.
Well, the time to register is already passed in terms of making that change. Isn't that right, Rachel? So in terms of the change in registration, or if you're moving from another county, that's already passed. What we have is our database for this county, and it's been updated through where we are. What you're talking about is somebody's moving in county, and they've moved from one location in county to a different one. That's when you do the update form when they're voting. And we do that update then. If it shows up that they're already there and they're in the wrong precinct, that's when you'd redirect them to the precinct that they're supposed to go vote in, so that they don't vote there. Otherwise, If they say, no, I'm going to vote in this precinct, then that's when provisional comes in again, that terrible word provisional that we still have. But, and it's real important to run through all that so that you make sure that you do the provisionals correct when we get there. But once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Any other questions for Tim in terms of this? Okay.
All right. And we're almost to the end, so. I believe John Smith Jr. is our last voter. So, all right, so John Smith Jr. does not have a driver's license. We're doing a manual entry on him, SMIJOH, and then we're going to click the search button. When we click that search button, we have 2 voters that come up, and that could happen even you could have 5 voters that had the SMI and a JOH. You know, John Smith is a pretty common name. In this case, though, it's him and his son. You got John Smith and John Smith Jr. The key to this one is making sure you pick the right one, because if you check somebody in as the wrong voter, it's kind of hard to uncheck them in, especially when the voter has left, because you just don't have a way. I can uncheck somebody, but if they've already left the polling location, you've got no way to reconcile checking them back in properly. So pay attention to these John Smiths, John Smith Juniors. You're going to select the John Smith Jr. by tapping on that data field, and he comes up. You can re-verify that he's really him, and then you can click the blue button, let him pick his party, click the accept button, have him sign, acknowledge that he's done signing, final verification page, click the submit button, and John Smith Jr. was checked in. All right, any questions about juniors and check-ins? If you do check somebody in and they're the wrong one and they're still at the polling location so we can check them in properly, call Jerry and we'll walk you through unchecking somebody in. I hope you don't call with that one though. It's not hard, it's just work. So, all right, one thing to look at, if you have somebody that you cannot find in the database, you have what's called the advanced search. So the advanced search on the search screen is this button right here. So rather than typing in the first 3 of their last name and the first 3 of their first name and hitting search, you would hit advanced options. This screen will come up. You have choices of date of birth, address, oh, sorry, address is there, don't use that one. You have date of birth, you have license number, voter ID. Those are probably the useful ones. The most useful one is date of birth. Because if they have a license number, they probably have a license. So you probably will never get to that. But you're going to hit date of birth. We're going to tap on the actual word there, D-O-B, and this screen comes up where we can type in their date of birth. In this case, it's 09/17/1930. I type that in, and I hit search. And when I hit search, I get a record for everybody in the county who was born on that day, in that year, which should be very few people. In this case, you then could click on Lily and Frederick and go through the process like you're used to. I'm not going to show you that because you've seen it several times. Okay, some information for things that could go wrong, things to keep things from going wrong. Plug in your iPad. Make sure it's always plugged in. Your cords are kind of short, so you may have to get creative with the power and how you situate your power, but you've only got 2 to 4, so I think you'll be fine. To kind of position the power between a pair of iPads, plug it in with the USB cord, and keep it plugged in. That's all I've got to share there. Notice that you got the P down there in the bottom to start the PollPad app whenever it happens to need to be restarted. If you rebooted your iPad, you'll have to restart it. In the event that something just locks up and the iPad won't do anything at all, you can, at the top left corner, there's a power button. At the bottom center, there's what's called the home button. If you hold both of them in for about 30 seconds, it'll shut off, and when you see the apple show up, you just let go, and it's rebooted. That's called a hard reset, just a cool name. I already told you to watch out for the glare, so watch out for the glare. Things to remember, keep it plugged in. Did I mention keeping it plugged in? When you put it away, try to match the iPad to its case. They both have numbers on them. Try to get your people using the stylus, and also yourself. Try and use the stylus rather than your fingers. mainly because it makes smudges on the screen. And some of the screens get pretty nasty at the end of the day. So you might want to keep some basic cleaning, just tissues for cleaning the screen. Tissues work great, but if you get people in there coughing on the screen, it makes for a nasty screen. More is less. Remember, when you're typing in the search, you're sending cleaning supplies. Awesome. Use the cleaning supplies that Judge is sending you. Remember, less is more. 3 letters is the recommended first and last name. Keeps the searches working really well. End of the day, closing the iPad, I'm just going to keep it short. Shut it off. Hold that top left button in till it's just like your iPhone if you have an iPhone. Hold the button in until the little slide to shut down slider comes up. Slide your finger across it. It turns off. And then take it apart and put it back in the box. So that's all there is to that. This is kind of what it should look like when you put it away. And that's all I have. So are there any questions about iPads, full pads? Nothing? I can't see you. So, there's one in the front right. What you got? If they're still in the polling location and they haven't, well, there's all kinds of things you can do with the ballot, and Judge is going to go over that. But if they haven't gone so far that you can't get the ballot back, then you still have a way to spoil that ballot. You're going to call Jerry, and he or I will walk you through unchecking them in so they can start over.
When you've done that and you've unchecked them, when you get the ballot back, remember that you have to spoil the ballot, tear that corner off of it so it can't go through the machine. That's one thing also I'll jump ahead with provisionals again. Provisionals, you make sure that you tear the corner off the ballot so they can't go through the machine, because provisionals have to go in the provisional box, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later. But anytime we have an opportunity to me to pound this into y'all, I'm trying to do that, okay? And I'm sorry about that. Also, those of you that are inspectors, your supplies are here. You'll pick them up tonight. You'll pick the iPads up on Monday from the probate office. You'll have your final supplies, your bag with the stuff in it, the cleaning stuff we have, and you'll pick the iPad up on Monday from the probate office. But you do get your supplies tonight. Make sure that when you take your supplies home, I know you'd rather leave them in the car, but remember a couple of years ago when we had so much rain that spring, the ballots swelled and they didn't want to go through the M100s. The ballots need to stay inside your house so that they don't absorb too much moisture if by some chance it starts raining this week. So make sure that you don't do that. Now, do you have any questions, Mr. Beyea, before we start with the next video?
Well, I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of on the same line as what she was asking. Say someone doing their checks on the ballot, can they mark one part and say, oh, I meant to mark the other? And they take it like that.
Well, if on the screen or
Like, we've got your 3 choices for the Republican, Democrat, or
if the,
Sorry about on the iPad itself?
iPad.
Yes, as long as you haven't, you can always hit start over.
yeah, you can always back up in terms of that. If you hadn't checked them all the way through so that you've done it, they hadn't even got their ballot at that point in time.
It doesn't get hard until you've actually hit submit, and they're checked in, you hand them a ballot. That's when people are crazy.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if no more questions, what we'll do is we're going to start the next video, and once it's over, Rachel is going to talk with us some about the procedures for the registrars and things coming, and we'll also talk some more about provisional ballots. I'm going to pound y'all so much on those, y'all are going to be tired of hearing me about it, because I want to make sure we don't have a problem with those. We have to do the count on those the week after the election, and it's a lot easier if everything's been done. And Terry Stripling was here this morning, and one of the things he said that was so important, read, read, read. And if you've got a question, read some more. because it's all going to be in there in terms of the information that you need. It's on the iPads. It's on the information from ESNS on terms of that. As long as you read through the manuals, and if there's a problem, you call us. We'll walk you through everything. Okay. So having said that, would you go ahead and start that first video number 1, and if you would turn the lights. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the poll worker training class for primary and runoff elections in Alabama. I'm Greg Woodger with Election Systems and Software, and we'll begin with the opening the polls process. When you first arrive, you must arrive no later than 6:30 a.m. Polling hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once you arrive and bring your materials in, open your record of elections box, remove the contents from that box, and lay those out in an orderly fashion. Next, open your provisional box, remove the envelope which contains the seals for the provisional box, seal the empty provisional box to prepare it for ballots if you have a provisional voter later in the day. Next, you will have sign-in books for the voters and clerks for the Democratic Party, Republican Party, and there is a nonpartisan election available. They may sign the appropriate book and be issued a nonpartisan ballot. On the back of the books is the oath of office. The inspector will swear each of you in. Please sign the back of a voters and clerks for each of those contests. And also on the back of those books is the watcher's oath. To be a watcher in a primary or runoff, they must be appointed by a candidate. One watcher per candidate is permitted. They must have a letter appointing them. Take that letter from that person, place it in the record of elections box for security to be put with the record of elections. Once they sign the back of that as a watcher, they may watch, observe, take notes throughout the day. If they are to leave during the day and be replaced, that second person must have their own letter of appointment and be sworn in, sign the appropriate documents, and then begin their process of watching and observing the polls. Also, you will have a machine manual. Some of you will have M100s, some of you will have DS200s. There will be an equipment manual in there, how to open and close the machine. Refer to that as necessary, and we will have an equipment demonstration in this video also. Please fill out the name badges, inspectors and clerks, and you also have poll watchers badges. Display those on your lapel to show that you are an official working the precinct that day. Also on election day, as an election official or a poll watcher, you're prohibited from wearing any kind of paraphernalia, buttons, badges to influence any voter. Also during the election day, please make a round through your voting area to make sure no one has left any campaign cards, pens, pencils with candidate names, or any electioneering material. If so, remove that, place it in the wastebasket out of the view of any other voter. Open the contents of your packet, get all the posters and display those posters on the wall. You have a directional sign if you're in a large facility that they need to be directed down a hallway. Place those appropriately. You have also a notice to voters if they are disabled or over the age of 70. If they ask for to be moved to the front of the line, they may do so. There is a voter assistance poster. Anyone may assist a voter except the voter's employer, agent of that employer, or a union agent. There are signs to how to properly mark a ballot, instruction posters. That is to be displayed also on a secrecy folder. There are instructions on it as well. You will be required to have a photo ID to vote in Alabama, and a poster is provided with all of the appropriate IDs that are permissible. There's also a no cell phone poster. You're not allowed to take photographs in the polling site, except for now there is a provision where a voter may take a selfie of themselves and their ballot inside the polling site, but no, they cannot capture any other voter's ballot in that photo. No campaign within 30 feet of the polling site. That's 30 feet from the entrance door. Any voter may come into that building. Beyond that 30 feet, they can pass out campaign cards, sample ballots, but not within the 30-foot distance from the door. Provisional balloting, we'll talk about that a little later, but there's a poster that explains provisional balloting to the voter if that's necessary. Vote your rights as a voter, there's a poster to just explain that as well. Voting instructions, poster is to be displayed. and a notice to voters that there are complaint and evaluation forms available if they would like to complete one of those. A large "Vote Here" sign to be displayed on the exterior door is also supplied. Prohibits acts of fraud and misrepresentation poster is included, and an American flag. Also, a "No Smoking" sign is supplied in your packet. When issuing ballots to voters, please only open box 1 of each style and begin with that box. Once box 1 is empty, open box 2 of that same style and continue the process. Also, please fill out a ballot accounting certificate before you open the polls. You will have multiple boxes of ballots. Complete each category. All the information you need to put on that form is listed on the labels on your boxes of ballots. It will tell you box 1 of 2, box 2 of 2, how many ballots are in each of those boxes, and the sequential number of the stubs of those ballots. Total those and give us a grand total of how many ballots you started with before the polls open that day. Sign the bottom of that form and you will reaccount for those ballots at the end of the evening once the voting process is completed. If you receive a supplemental list of absentee voters, please strike those voters from the list as instructed by your local elections office. I mentioned earlier that a voter is required to have a photo ID. There is one exception to that rule. If a voter fails to have photo ID and 2 polling officials can positively ID that person, there is a election official's affidavit for identifying qualified elector. Once 2 poll workers sign that, print their name and date it, and they print the name of the voter they're identifying, place that document in the record elections box in envelope 6, and let the voter vote without a ID. If the voter has an I beside their name or an INA, that means the voter is on inactive status. Does not mean they cannot vote, but prior to voting, they must complete a voter identification form. The forms are in your packet. Please check the box, update, have the voter complete that form with all information and all boxes completed, including their signature at the bottom of the document. If the document is not signed, the Board of Registrars in the county is prohibited from updating that voter's information in the database. Also, that form can be used for verification. Say we have a junior, senior, and one of those 2 moves out of state or out of county. The Board of Registrars may authorize the voter to vote, but must fill out a verification form prior to voting. When you call your Board of Registrars, have the following information: a complete legal name, a date of birth, Alabama driver's license number, or the last 4 digits of Social Security number. With that information, your registrars can track that voter's status and locate that voter, which county they're in, and if they are a legal voter in your precinct. Once the verification is filled out, make sure you wrote down the name of the registrar you spoke with, and on the back of the form, there is a box that says verification of voter. You must list the name of the registrar that authorized that process. Place that in your Board of Registrars envelope, which is the only envelope with green print on the exterior, so that can be returned to the registrars after the election. Also in your packet, there is a report of change of residency or death form. The only people permitted to fill this form out is a family member of the voter, the inspector of your precinct, or your local probate judge, sheriff, or circuit court clerk. Say, for instance, a family member comes in and brother or sister has moved out of state and that family member wants to report that. They can check that box, family member, complete that information, where their family member has moved to, and that would also go in the envelope for the Board of Registrars so they can correct the rolls. If you're the inspector and you acknowledge that a person on your list has passed away recently, check the box, inspector of the precinct, and fill the information out of the voter and your information that you are reporting this back to the registrars. An investigation will be launched to make sure they find a death certificate before they strike them from the rolls. And as of my earlier conversation, those that have moved out of state, they will confirm that that person has actually moved before they strike them from the rolls. Also in your package, you'll have a pink sheet, which is a complaint form. If the voter wants to share information back to the local election official, please offer them a complaint form. They can fill it out at their home. This form must be notarized. There's a place on the back for the notarization. The address for the Secretary of State's office is also provided on the back of the form. They would mail that to the Secretary of State. If it has been notarized, a copy of that will go to your local probate judge for review. If it is not notarized, it will not be considered a valid complaint form. Also, I want to discuss assistance in voting. If a voter would like to have assistance marking their ballot on the paper sign-in books, they would sign in column 2 stating that they desire assistance, and the assisting party signs in column 3 that they assisted the voter. Anyone may assist that voter except that person's employer, agent of the employer, or agent of a labor union they belong to. They can proceed to the voting area. The assistant can help mark the ballot and come to the scanner and make sure that ballot is deposited and scanned into the equipment that day. Once your voting process slows down that morning, I have some suggestions. First of all, take your yellow sheet that has the instructions of what you would need to close the polls with that night. There are labels provided for your precinct. Please place those labels on all return envelopes to indicate where those results came from. Please place a label on your provisional box as well to identify that box has come from your location, which will make it easier to identify the sheriff's office when they pull those out for the provisional count 7 days after the election. Also, if you're the inspector or the provisional officer, please open the provisional booklet and refresh your memory, read over those instructions, and have your supplies laid out in case someone does come in to vote provisional. That will make the process much easier. In a primary election, each voter must declare a political party preference. Once the declaration is made, they sign the appropriate book and are issued that ballot. If they're not willing to make a declaration of party and there is a nonpartisan election available, they may sign the appropriate book and be issued a nonpartisan ballot. In a primary runoff election, if the voter voted in the Democratic primary, they're only entitled to vote in the Democratic runoff election. If the voter selected the Republican Party primary, then they can only vote in the Republican Party runoff election. If the voter did not participate at all in the primary or voted a nonpartisan ballot in the primary, they may vote in either the Democratic or the Republican runoff election. Also, in a primary election, there may be an instance where a voter is issued a ballot and then they look for a particular candidate and that candidate is not on the ballot they received. If the candidate they're looking for is on the other ballot, please note on the first book they sign they did not participate in that primary, and then they must sign the other book, and the first ballot would be spoiled, placed in a spoiled ballot envelope, and once they sign the other book, that ballot would be issued to that voter. When issuing a ballot to a voter, please offer a secrecy folder to each voter. Once the voter has cast their ballot, please make sure you offer them an I voted sticker. If a voter makes an error on a ballot and they bring it to you and want to complete a new ballot, make sure you take possession of that ballot, spoil it by tearing a corner off of it, and place it in the spoiled ballot envelope before you issue a new ballot to that voter. Now I want to talk to you about the provisional ballot process. Before someone starts the provisional process, please make a call to your local board of registrars with the voter's name, a date of birth, address, driver's license number, or the last four of their social security number, and let the registrars assist you and investigate this voter before you start the process. If you're instructed to allow them to vote a provisional, you removed all your supplies from your packet, hand the voter a PB3 form, which is a provisional ballot form. On the top right-hand corner is a sworn statement of affirmation. Once the voter completes that and signs that, they are now entitled to vote a provisional ballot. If the voter is unwilling to complete and sign that, the voter is not permitted to follow through with the process. Once the voter has signed it, make sure they drop down to the bottom of the form. There's an update portion. They complete that and sign the form. The form is perforated, but please do not separate the two components. Once that's handed back to you as the inspector, complete your portion, including which ballot style the voter is entitled to. Once they make a party declaration, it may require another call to the registrars that you have their address to be instructed of which ballot style that voter is entitled to vote in a provisional process. When issuing a provisional ballot, Some counties use an orange sticker to cover up the timing marks to disable the ballot. Other counties tear a corner off of it. Follow the instructions of your particular county in disabling these ballots. Also, an envelope 1, PB1, is a secrecy envelope. Envelope PB2, you are to print the name of the voter on that envelope and also the line of the roster of which they signed. Whichever party they voted in, please put that party, reference it as either DEM, REP, and then if they sign line 1, the number 1. If the next person would be number 2, and so forth. Once the form is completed, the voter takes their ballot marking device, envelope 1, envelope 2, to the voting area. Once they mark their ballot, they are instructed on the envelope to place that ballot into envelope number 1 as a secrecy envelope, then insert that into envelope 2. Envelope 2 would be deposited in the provisional ballot box, which is sealed with red seals top and bottom that clearly state provisional ballot seal. Also, now you are left holding their PB3 form that they filled out. Make sure you fold that form, place it in the PB4 envelope marked for the sheriff and board of registrars. The reasons for a voter casting provisional ballot are as follows. The person's name does not appear on the list of registered voters. Person's registration status cannot be determined by the provisional ballot officer. Voter is unable to comply with the voter identification requirement. The voter has requested but claims to have not voted an absentee ballot. Voter objects to the political party identified in the list of registered voters for the primary runoff election. Inspector has knowledge the person is not entitled to vote at the precinct and challenges the person. Ballot is cast after the legal time for closing the polls due to a federal or state court order extending the hours of the polls. Also in your provisional supplies, there's an outline form. Please give that to each voter that is casting the provisional ballot to help them understand the process that they are going through. If the reason for the provisional ballot is due to an inspector's challenge, a PB3 form would be completed by the voter. The inspector would check challenge on the reasoning. Then a challenge form would also be completed. Once the voter marks their ballot, returns it to the inspector, please separate the challenge form. The PB3 form and the canary copy would go in the PB4 envelope. The white copy of the challenge form would be deposited in the provisional ballot box, and the pink copy would be handed to the voter to take with them once they leave the polls. If the reason for casting provisional ballot was lack of proper identification, the voter has until 5 p.m. Friday following the election to present that identification to their local board of registrar's office. Now I'd like to cover the packaging of your materials to go back to Election Central that evening. At 7 p.m., announce the polls are closed. The best process is to bring all those voters into the facility, lock the door. If that's not possible and you have enough staff, send one of your poll workers to the end of the line to enforce the end of the voting line process. Once the last voter has been processed and scanned their ballot, please close your machine out. Make sure the 0 copy was signed that morning and all copies of results are signed that night. Packaging is important. You can have a great election day, but if you get in a rush and don't take your time, things can be mispackaged. So please get your yellow check sheet out and follow through the process. The best practice is make a line to the left and then someone else double checks. Therefore, you have a X across each box that every envelope has been checked and double checked before you seal it to make sure you have the proper items in those envelopes. At the end of the night, when you close your polls, make sure you open the voted ballot bin, remove all the voted ballots, and place those in a box as provided. Use one of the empty boxes that you have from that day. If you do not have an empty box, remove the pad or two of ballots that are remaining. Create yourself an empty box. Make sure you seal those boxes with the black record election seal, and on the side, please place a voted ballot seal and indicate how many boxes of voted ballots you are returning that evening. The first envelope we're going to talk about is the Board of Registrars. If you use a paper roster, if it will fit in that envelope, please place it in there along with any update forms, verification forms, death, change of address forms. If it will not fit in that envelope, we provide a large rubber band your notebook and or your list to the envelope to make sure it is returned to the registrars for proper voter credit. In a primary or runoff, you would have an envelope to contain the Democratic voters poll list that their voters signed, also an envelope for the Republican Party for their voters, and if there's a nonpartisan election, you will be provided an envelope for the voters list for that election. The brown envelope, you'll have one for the Democratic Party. That will be the clerk's list that you maintain a legible list of the names. You will have also a clerk's list for the Republican Party and a clerk's list for the nonpartisan. Those brown envelopes are to be placed in the record of elections container for return to Election Central. The original copy of results, which is the zeros you signed that morning and the very first complete set of totals that night, must go in envelope 5 to be returned to the probate judge, as well as the first original results. You must complete your ballot accounting certificate at the end of the day. What that will entail is take the number of votes that were cast on the machine, the number of spoiled ballots, the number of provisional ballots, and the number of unused ballots, which should add back to the total of ballots that you began with that day. Make sure that ballot accounting form is also placed in envelope 5. The second copy of your totals, I suggest you tape that on your window or door for public viewing. The third copy would go in envelope 6 for the record of elections container. Again, it's a brown envelope. Envelope 7D would be for your Democratic Party chair. Envelope 7R would be for your Republican Party chair. These are all copies of the results tape. And envelope 7CA would be a copy if there is an amendment or a nonpartisan election on that day. Envelope 8 is marked for the news media. They are to be given a copy of the results from each tabulator. Envelope 10, make sure you put the copy of the results signed, and also the thumb drive and or memory card from your voting machine. It is to be placed in envelope 10, and that's clearly marked for the judge of probate. Envelope 11 is for your keys for your voting machine. Envelope 12 is for any extra supplies you might want to return to Election Central that night. Again, review your yellow checklist. All brown envelopes go in the brown record of elections box. All of the white envelopes, we provide a large plastic bag. When sealing these boxes, we've made a change. The record of elections box will be sealed with a white label with black print. It'll be marked record of elections, and the provisional box is to be sealed with a white label with red print. This says provisional ballot. Also at closing, there is a seal to seal the insertion flap, the slot at the end of your provisional box. If you have 0 provisional ballots, there are items that still must be returned. First of all, do not place anything in the provisional box. It will be a sealed empty box. Indicate on your seal on the end of the box that it contains 0 votes, date it, and put your precinct name or number on that label so we know where those returns came from. Take all of your provisional roster books, open those up, place the word something to the effect of 0 ballots cast or no ballots. Place that in the envelope PB4 to be returned to the sheriff, which must be handed off to the Board of Registrars by 12 noon the day following the election. If you had provisional ballots, indicate on the end of the box on that label how many ballots are contained in the box. Likewise, place the sworn statement, any challenge forms in the PB4 envelope, and also on that envelope, mark how many are contained in there. If you have 2, put 2, or just indicate what's inside the envelope before you return it. The white PB4 would also be included in your plastic bag to be returned to Election Central.
Are y'all tired of hearing provisional? That's how important it is. I mean, there's not that many provisional ballots actually cast, but it's very important for y'all to do the process correctly, because we have to do the canvass through the registrars, and they have to help us do that. Or they're the ones that put it together, and then we have a canvass 7 days after the election to count those. If we have a runoff, because we've had that in the past, the provisional ballots could be the difference between when there's going to be a runoff or if there's not going to be one. So it's important that we make sure that we do that to see if the votes are going to count. Does anybody that works the parish polls, anyone from there here tonight? The voting location for parish changed Monday. We found out that from the mayor that the gym was not serviceable for the election, so it's been moved to the city hall. The county commission voted on that Monday. So I'm telling you, so it's going to be in the paper, but I didn't know until Monday, and I found out then. Okay, it was a surprise to everybody because 4 months ago it was great, but not Monday. They were delivering the machines and we had to get a change. So I just letting y'all know that. You also know that there's 2 other voting locations that have been changed during this election. Before that, Empire, Little Vine Church is the new voting location in Empire. And in Cordova is the Cordova City Hall now. Those are the 2 changes that happened. Y'all all know that there's the districts have changed also for the House districts. We're going to put in the precincts that are affected by that. There'll be a sheet in your things you pick up on Monday that says what those are. So if you have someone that comes in and says, I want to vote for this House member, but it's no longer in that precinct. The precincts have not changed, but the House districts have changed. So that's moved some things around, but we'll have that information so you'll be easily to tell everybody. Now, having said that, I'm going to ask Rachel Williams if she'll come up. She's done a handout that y'all have picked up at the end and going to go over some things in regard to that for you, and then we'll do the other 2 videos. The other 2 videos are not as long as this, so we don't have that much longer here tonight, so I'm sure y'all want to hear that too, okay? Rachel, thank you.
I will be quick, I promise. A new thing that you have this time is these notes to poll workers. At one of our trainings, they recommended that we give you some notes. This is kind of like just some cheat sheets. We were very kind to you because the sample that was given to us looked like a book. And we were like, that is ridiculous. We're not making them read a book. So we condensed it down to what we felt was helpful for you. You can just familiarize yourself with this. I'm not going to go over it and read it. You can read. You can do it in your own free time. A couple of things I do want to make note of is on the second page, on the back of the front page, you'll see a flow chart. Inactive, and I know I heard him talk about that tonight in the poll books. Inactive, people freak out. They think they've done something wrong. Most of you have worked the polls before. There's some new poll workers this year, so I want to make sure we know. Inactive, they've not done anything wrong. It just means some mail has come back to us. We just need an updated address. If their address has not changed, they still need to fill out an update verification form just so we know that that address is the same, because we have them flagged in the computer that we're not getting mail, so we need to know if it's changed or not changed. This flow chart will just explain to you very quickly what you can do. It answers the questions. One key thing is when they update, that a lot of people just think update and vote. But if that update changed, their address changed where they vote, they've got to go to the correct place. They can't just automatically update and vote right there. Now, if their address changed, but they're still in the same precinct, they can vote a regular ballot, no problem. But we need you to verify that address. If it changed polling places, they're going to have to go to their correct polling place. So that's kind of a little slow down on the inactive process just to make sure that they're voting in the correct place. The next page, we've just given some key reasons somebody's name may be left off the voter list that you can familiarize yourself with so that when that arises, you already kind of know what's going on. Always know you are welcome to call us. We will help you with that as well. Provisionals. Judge is going to pound that on us, but there's notes about provisionals. You can again read over those. We did list the most common mistakes with the provisional process, so you can familiarize yourself with what we are seeing a lot of times when they come in to us. Just, they're minute mistakes, but if there are any mistakes on there, we cannot count those votes. So that's just there for you to kind of be aware of what is the common mistakes that we do see. Now, one new thing that you'll see is a pink page in your packet. The first pink page is a sample of these pink slips. We feel like these pink slips are going to make your job easier because y'all are having to call us every time somebody needs to go to a different polling place. You have to call us. Where do they need to go? We tell you. They get to the new polling place, and then that poll worker has to call us. They just came in here, and we need to verify. So y'all are having to call double. We're answering double phone calls. The phone lines get jammed. Y'all get frustrated because y'all are busy, and you can't get a simple answer. So if you are the polling place that sends someone to another polling place, you'll be the one that has to make the phone call to verify where they're going. But if you'll fill out this pink slip and send it with them and tell them, present this at the next polling place. The next polling place receives the pink slip. They don't really have to call us unless there's something else going on. But that pink slip will tell you they've already talked to us, we've already verified everything, they're at your polling place to vote provisional. So that maybe will help y'all not have to call so much, and we'll see how that goes. But it works in other counties. We wanted to try that here to try to make it a smoother process. So, and your pink slips, like Jerry confirmed this morning, that your pink slips will be in your materials that you pick up Monday when you get your poll pads. And that way you'll have a supply of those if you need them. So always feel free to call us. We've listed our names on here, our phone number. We listed the probate office phone number for machine and facility issues. We're always glad to assist you, so feel free to call us anytime. Thank y'all. Questions? Yes.
Excuse me, right here where it says ballot style,
Yes.
the precinct where they have come to by mistake, they have to put that down there?
Well, yes, and when they, okay, so to fill this form out, the poll worker's gonna call us, and we can tell them the ballot style that they will need at the other polling place when they go. Does that make sense?
How do you know that? I mean, I thought the person could declare which one they wanted to vote.
Well, now, in the primary, they will, and you might can clarify the ballot styles.
Yeah, luckily this time in terms of the ballot styles, we have the Democratic, we have the Republican. The only ballot styles that are going to be different are in the House districts. And it's a matter of what precinct you're actually voting in. Because the District 14's got some changes, but there's no split precincts. It's all one thing, so you're not going to have part of that precinct voting in one House district and the other. So this time, it's really not any problem in terms of the ballot styles.
I understand that, but if I call you and you tell me this person is going to vote Democrat, but that
Well,
person says no when I get to that other place.
Well, it'll be a matter if they've selected which one they want to vote, then they can tell you which one they want to, and they can change their mind when they get to the other voting location if they want to. They could.
Right, exactly.
You
And
get-
really, this is a form that's for statewide, and other counties have much more complicated voting centers where there are many ballot styles. We did have one here that was a split district, and we had some House 13, some House 14, so we did have a ballot style issue, but that's no longer the case after the redistricting, so. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very sensitive issue because they don't want to announce to the whole polling place if they're voting Republican or Democrat. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay.
Any other questions on that? One thing, I got an email this afternoon from John Merrill, the Secretary of State's office, and he says they've had, during some of the public testing, you'll say, what's public testing? We had to test all these machines about a week ago. And when I say all these machines. So, but apparently some locations, or some of the public test, somebody tried to run photocopied ballots through. So pay attention, make sure that when they run a ballot through, they're just running, so the person that's manning the machine, supervising it, needs to make sure they're not trying to run more than one ballot through that they've made a photocopy of. But apparently, that's happened somewhere during public testing. So, just a word to the wise, okay? I got this email this afternoon, so it's amazing that we get those. All right, now, we've got, yes.
We talked about the inactive voters. He mentioned we've had 2 polling places change, Little Vine Church in Empire and then Cordova. So if you work either of those polling places, you're probably going to have a lot of inactives if they come out to vote, because we had to mail out a postcard to every single voter in that precinct, and I was amazed at how many came back. And when they come back to us, they're flagged inactive. So just be aware, if you work either one of those polling places, you may have a lot of inactive. And I forgot to mention that.
Okay, so all the good news. Don't you love all the good news? But the biggest thing is, for us, it really helps us because we've had to have a court order to be able to open things the night of the election to get things out of the boxes when they were misfiled. So really pay attention. You have a slip. In your box, you've got this green slip, and it says what goes where. Pay attention to it. Make sure that the stuff that goes into the bag goes in the bag, the plastic bag. The stuff that goes in the box goes in the box. And never the twain shall meet. Okay? Because if they go into the wrong box, that's not the record of election. If something goes into the record of election box, I have to get a court order to open it to get the stuff out, because I've had memory sticks go in there. We've had the other stuff. So make sure that you put it in the right place. Bags and box. It's pretty easy in terms of it. Provisional is pretty simple. It goes over there. But if you follow this list, and once again, like Terry Stripling said this morning, read, it goes simple. Paying attention. I know a long day, it's like a long day today. We've been at this a while this morning. Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to play these last 2 videos so y'all can go home. Okay. Thank you.
Next, we're going to walk through the process of opening on the DS200 precinct scanner. The first thing you're going to need to open the polls is a set of keys. These keys include a flat silver key and a black and silver barrel key. Let's get the unit plugged in before we do anything else. On the back of the DS200, you'll see a small gray door. Use your flat silver key to unlock the door and remove the power cord. Plug the power cord into a wall outlet. Next, let's open the unit itself. Unlatch the lid. Use your silver flat key to unlock the lid. And open the lid fully. Next, we're going to open the screen. To open the screen, take your black and silver barrel key, unlock the screen, and simply lift the screen. When the screen is lifted, you will hear the unit automatically power on. So once the unit powers on and boots up, you'll come to a screen that looks like this. Before that, a configuration report will print. On this screen, you can see your polling place location. You can also see your public count number and important election information. The unit is telling us now that the voting device is ready for the poll to be open. It shows us that the election definition is found and that it is plugged into electricity. We have 2 options: don't open, turn off, or open polls. So to open the polls, we will press open poll. When we do that, an additional tape will begin to print. This will be our zero totals report. This will be the report that we use to verify that each one of the races and each candidate in those races has zero totals cast before opening the polls. Once the zero tape finishes printing, be sure to have each inspector, clerk, or watcher sign the tape where appropriate. After everyone who's required to sign signs the tape, we're going to roll it up and we're going to tuck it safely beside the machine. Be sure do not remove the tape until the end of the day. To continue going through the process of opening the polls, we're going to choose Go to Voting Mode at the bottom of the screen. When we do that, the next screen appears. It says, "Welcome, please insert your ballot." The DS200 is now ready for voting. The last thing that we're going to do before we allow voters to cast a ballot on the DS200 is we're going to check the emergency bin and the ballot bin at the bottom to make sure that no ballots are included in the ballot bin. We take our flat silver key, unlock the main ballot bin, open the door, verify that there are no ballots. We'll do the same thing with the emergency bin. Open the door, check to ensure that there are no ballots, close, and lock the door. Always ensure that the protective flap is up so that no ballots can be inserted. At this point, voters are ready to cast their ballots on the DS200. To cast a ballot on the DS200, voter takes their marked ballot, insert the ballot in the bottom slot. The unit says scanning ballot, please wait. Then we heard the ballot drop down into the ballot box. An indication comes up that says, "Thank you for voting, your ballot has been cast." The voter can return their privacy sleeve if they received one and receive a sticker, and they're all done. As each voter casts their ballot on the DS200, the public count here at the top will increase by 1 each time. In some cases, a voter may make a mistake and mark a vote for one race with 2 selections. When they do so and they take their ballot to the DS200 and insert it as indicated, the unit will scan the ballot, but it will show us that you filled in too many ovals in one contest. These votes will not count. The voter has 2 options. They can return the ballot or they can cast the ballot. If we press return, the ballot will be returned to the voter and the voter can make corrections as needed.
If a voter makes an error on a ballot and they bring it to you and want to complete a new ballot, make sure you take possession of that ballot, spoil it by tearing a corner off of it, and place it in the spoiled ballot envelope before you issue a new ballot to that voter.
If we had chosen cast, the ballot would have been cast as recorded and dropped down into the ballot box. Like an overvoted ballot, some voters may make no selections on their ballot. When they go to the DS200, insert it into the unit will scan the ballot, but it will clearly show us that we have inserted a blank ballot and that no votes have been cast. In this case, we can either cast a blank ballot or we can return the ballot. When we press return, the ballot will be returned to the voter and the voter can mark it accordingly if they need to. In the unlikely event that a machine can't be used for a power outage or some other similar situation, we want to make sure that voters can continue to cast their ballot throughout the day. In that case, we use the emergency bin here on the ballot box. To use the emergency bin, we'll take our flat silver key, we'll unlock and open the door, and we'll pull down the emergency security flap. We'll secure and lock the door back And now voters have a safe place that they can securely store their ballots until the unit is operable again. So once the unit is operable again and ballots can be scanned into it, we need to make sure that we secure the emergency bin once again. To do that, we unlock, open the emergency bin, and we pull the flap up, close and lock the door, and now ballots can't be cast into the emergency bin. Voters can be directed again to insert their ballots into the DS200 unit. If we had a situation where we needed to use the emergency bin during the day, we want to make sure that those ballots that were inserted into the emergency bin get tabulated and cast just like the rest of the ballots that were cast during the day. So, after the polls close, but before we go through the closing process on the DS200 itself, we need to extract those ballots. And to do so, we open the emergency bin, we pull out any ballots that were inserted, we scan them into the DS200 before we close out and tabulate our results. Remember that any poll watchers or anyone present within the precinct can watch that process being done during the closing process. It's 7 o'clock and the polls are closed and all voters who are in line have already cast their ballots. Let's go through the process now of closing down the DS200. We're going to take our keys, the same keys that we used to open the unit. We're going to take our barrel key and we're going to open the security door here on the side of the unit. When the security door is open, there are two buttons that appear. The first button is the power button. The second button is the close polls button. To close polls, we're going to choose the close poll button. When we do that, this screen will appear. It tells us you have chosen to close the poll for this voting device. To return to voting mode now, press Don't Close. Keep voting. To continue closing the poll, press Close Poll. To close the poll, we'll choose the Close Poll button. The polls are now closing on the unit. At this point, our results reports will begin printing. Once printing is complete and all the required results tapes have been printed by the unit, make sure that when you remove the tape, that all workers required to sign the results tape do so appropriately. The tapes will go in their assigned envelopes during the closing process. The unit now tells us that this voting device has been successfully closed. At this point, we will close the security door and we will choose Finished Turn Off. When we do so, the DS200 will begin to power down. After the unit has completely powered down and there are no more lights lit up within the security panel, remove the thumb drive. The thumb drive will be taken to envelope number 10, put into that envelope with the results tapes. The last thing that we'll do before closing down the unit is to remove all the ballots that have been cast during the day. So we take our flat silver key, unlock and open the ballot bin door, and remove all ballots included. To lock the unit up for security, we'll close the screen, lock it with our barrel key, close and latch the lid, and lock it with our silver key. When we turn the unit around, we will unplug it. We'll tuck the power cord back into the security door in the back, close, and lock with the silver key. The DS200 is now completely closed. Let's review the opening process for the express vote unit. Each express vote unit will come in its own black carry case. Be sure to unzip the case, remove the unit, and remove the power cord from the case. Set the unit up on a table. There's a small metal kickstand that extends in the back. You'll want to take the power block, plug it into the back of the unit, and plug the unit into a wall for power. To begin opening the polls on the express vote unit, we will take our black and silver barrel key, and we will open the small security door on the side of the unit. When we open the security door, it reveals the power button and the mode button. To turn the unit on, we will switch the power button from the off position to the on position. When we do, the unit will begin to power on. Once the unit powers on fully, you'll be prompted to enter the election code. Be sure to enter the code provided by your county elections office. When the code is entered, press accept. When we press accept, we're asked to wait as it verifies the code that we entered. A couple of things to point out on this screen. It tells us the election that we are using. It tells us that the power is running on AC, and it tells us that the battery is fully charged. So, to continue and finish setting up the express vote, we will press OK. Before we have voters mark their ballots on the express vote, we're going to be sure to close the security door on the side and lock it securely. The unit is now ready for voting. Let's review a couple of important features for the express vote unit. When the unit is powered on and the polls are open, there's polling information that can be found here at the top. There's also important election information, including the election date. There are two ports at the bottom of the express vote unit. One is for headphones. To use the headphones, you simply plug them in to the headphone port. There's also a second port for anyone who has any other type of accessibility device, like a sip and puff device, for example. On the side of the unit, included on every unit, is a tactile keypad. This will be the keypad that voters could use to navigate through the ballot and make their selections. There's a tempo button, a volume button, up, down, back, forward, pause, and a home button. There's also a button here at the top that can hide the screen as voters mark their ballot in privacy. To mark a ballot using the express vote unit, a voter will receive a blank express vote activation card that looks like this. Poll workers will remove a stub from the bottom of the card before issuing it to a voter. When the voter receives their blank activation card, they'll take it to the express vote unit and they will insert it with the cut corner as it appears on the unit. When we insert the card, the unit will accept it, it will scan the card, and it will pull up our ballot style. To begin marking a ballot, we choose our selection for each race that appears. We touch Next to continue through the ballot. If we make a selection and we choose to make a separate selection, or we simply made a mistake, we can touch a new selection and the previous selection disappears. At the bottom of the screen, we have an option to zoom to make the text larger. We also have an option to make the screen contrast, to change it to black and white. We can continue making our selections. This is a vote for 2. When we finish making all of our selections, we come to the review screen. The review screen will show us each one of the races and the choices that we made for each of those races. If there's anything that we see here that we feel like we need to go back and change, we can simply choose that race. It takes us back to that race. We can make a new choice. When we press next, it goes back to the review screen and it highlights the choices that we made. At this point, if we have verified our selections and we're ready to mark our ballot, we touch next and we touch print card. When we print card, the unit will take the blank express vote activation card that we used to activate the machine. It will return it to us and it will have each one of the races and the selections that we made. At this point, we're ready to take our ballot to the DS200, scan it into the DS200 for tabulation. Next, let's go through the closing process on the express vote unit. To close down the unit at the end of the day, after the polls close, we'll open the side security door using our barrel key. We'll open the door to reveal the power button. To close down, all we do is simply turn the unit off. We switch from on to off, and the unit will begin to power down. We'll close and lock our security door back. And the unit will begin the close down process. Once the unit is fully powered down, we'll remove the power cord from the wall. We will remove the cord from the back of the unit, and we will place the unit and the power cord back in the black soft-sided carrying case for transport.
Guess what? We're done. Yeah, I understand. Okay, just remember, go ahead. There's a question. Yes.
Okay, on the express vote,
Yes, ma'am.
if they take it over there and put it in the machine and it says that there's a mistake on it, you spoil that and start all over again?
You would treat it just like another ballot in regard to it. And on the express vote, there's a slot on the DS200 that it goes into, and if there's something that's going to reject it, it will reject it to begin with. But it's been voted. It'll come up and say what, if you haven't voted enough races. It only on the express vote, it doesn't print the entire ballot like you would if you're hand doing it. It's just printing what you voted for. So it'll just do that. I don't believe it'll bounce it because of that. I believe it'll just accept it. Any other questions? Well, there's batteries on these, and they continue on for a period of time. There's a battery in these machines, so they'll operate without power for a period of time. But if it looks like it's going to be off for a while, you'll need to call us so we can make arrangements to get a generator or do whatever else we need to do in that regard. Now, remember, pick up the ones that are the inspectors, pick up your stuff tonight. The poll pads and all your other materials will be ready Monday at the probate office. All day Monday you'll be able to pick it up. You will have extension cords and all the things like we sent last time. You have the longer, I know he talked about having short iPad cords. We have longer ones that we send out, so everything should be fine. If there's any issues, y'all call us, okay? We're going to answer the phone and be there early. We'll be there early and we'll be there late, okay? Thank you for being here and thank you for serving.